You're recognized to suspend the regular order of business on committee substitute for Senate Bill 3.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Senate Bill 3 bans products that contain THC. 2019, the legislature passed HB 1325, which legalized the production of hemp. It was federally regulated, and the plant itself was what federal regulation dealt with. The federal regulations left the product regulations to the states. The bill was intended to support farmers and to promote an industrial hemp market that was designed to encourage the development of non-consumable hemp products like fiber. However, after 1325 was passed, companies began to blatantly violate, exploit, coerce the Texas law by selling products far more that exceeded the THC limitations imposed by the definition of the hemp plant. Illegal high-potency synthetic THC products have flooded the marketplace. That's critical. Synthetic THC, synthetic, man-made, man-designed, man-created, man-manipulated. Most of these products are created in a lab. Synthetic products are substantially more potent than illegal street marijuana, and they are readily available in gas stations, convenience stores, and just about anywhere you walk to now you can buy one of these products. Senate Bill 3 bans the sale of all consumable hemp products that contain THC. The only consumable hemp products that remain legal are those under the CBD or the CBG category. Any product that remains under this bill will have to be properly labeled and placed in child-resistant packaging. SB3 also includes new criminal and administrative penalties. For those that argue that this should just be more regulation and tax, there's not enough tax that we can collect that will deal with the behavioral health issues, the addictions that we currently face in our HHSC budget. It would be in the billions. It's unenforceable because every day a new product hits the shelf that was at the whim of a chemist. I don't call them smart, I call them diabolical. What they have created and what they're doing is akin to K2 and spice and bath salts of the past that we as a legislature voted out of existence as soon as possible. The effect of what this drug is doing to the people that are involved in it, contrary to what you hear, it's devastating lives, it's generational, it is creating psychosis, it is creating paranoia, it is taking people from a very high-performing individual, sometimes in college, the midlife of their crisis begins at 20, 25, short order, they're non-articulate, they're non-verbal. This is not your granddad or my dad or my pot of my generation. It was 5%. It was a lid you got. You didn't have to worry about where it came from or what was in it. This is synthetically induced, and you have no idea of the quality of control that was involved, and you're getting stuff besides the pot, not to mention the pot is up to as much as 80%. It is extremely dangerous, extremely addicting, extremely potent. We do a lot of things in this legislature that have positive impacts on people's lives. Not often do we get to have things that will literally save lives. That's what this bill's about. I have people that say, just regulate it. You can't regulate something that changes by chemists every day. I have people say, tax it. Not ever going to be enough to pay for the damage that it does, but is there a price you can put on some parent that has lost their child, either in physical, have died, or are no longer functioning adults? There's not a price to be paid for that. There's not a price or a cost you can identify with that. It's not regulatory. This industry, by design, says they're all about age gating. They don't want 18 to 21s to get it. But if you look at the map and where they set up 8,000 plus distribution centers, they targeted walking distance of every school they could. So their narrative doesn't fit their walk. These people are not good people. They're evil. They don't care. It's all about the bottom line. It's in its infancy. $8 billion industry came up in less than 3 years in practice. They've really gotten most of this done in 3 to 4 or 5 years here. But it's still new enough that the legislature can close the door on this issue today and not let it expand any further. We don't get an option to pull the genie back in the bottle very often. This is the day we get to do that. So with that, I move suspended regular order of business on Senate Bill 3.
Senator Hinojosa from Hidalgo. What
Thank you.
purpose?
Will the senator yield for a couple of questions?
I do, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Perry, I remember when we first debated the bill, the hemp licensing bill, about 3 sessions ago. And one of my concerns was a prediction that this would happen. We would end up creating a loophole for legalizing marijuana, for lack of a better word, THC. But the reality now is that this system has been abused. As I see all these vape shops all over the place, and I see young people using this product to get high. Even in high school, around the high schools that I've been around, I've seen that happen again and again. So what type of devices are being used to be able to, for the use of THC and what they're selling now in the market?
So good question. What kind of device? It's pretty much anything. It's gummies that look and taste like candy. It's marketed under candy labels. It's vape, where you can inhale it, and that has unintended consequences outside of THC that they're proving up now. It's smokable, but it's illegal today for smokable. But pretty much any way you can ingest or consume is the proper delivery. I will point out what you said. The sad commentary, this was originally an ag bill to provide a new ag crop. Because of this industry and what it did to the market very quickly, only 174 acres out of the 125 million farm acres in Texas actually produced hemp fiber last year. That's a pretty sad statistic that this industry took it down. So every way you can ingest something is where it is being consumed.
And how many of these retail stores do you estimate we have here in our state?
8,000 plus that we know of. I'm sure there's a lot that are unlicensed. This stuff is in any and every place that you can consume or buy consumer product. So whether all those are licensed to sell this or not, probably not.
And I have had complaints and concerns from parents who have made comment that their underage children, kids, teenagers, have become addicted to this product being sold.
Yeah, and I would say to that, a lot of the narrative is about the 18 to 21 or age gating as they refer to. The parents that I came in contact with yesterday, 12 parents came, have had a really horrible, tragic story of how this has impacted their kids. The bulk of those were 20 to 29-year-olds. So the idea that it's impacting only our youth because they're getting it and shouldn't have it is just a false narrative. It's just not actually. It's anybody that is using it is running the risk of becoming addicted with psychosis, with paranoia. It's kind of like, again, it's back to akin to the K-Spice days, K2's days.
And I have received quite a few inquiries from veterans. Many of them have experienced PTSD and combat. What are we doing to address some of their concerns?
Not today, but Senate Bill 1505 is going to expand our compassionate use program that Texas has today. It will give more access statewide by requiring, currently it's May. We're going to make that a shall. The DPS is going to have to get out 3 more licenses, so that would make 6 total licenses to dispensaries. In addition to that, we're going to allow storage of the product in multiple locations. That's a problem because now it has to be hand delivered, if you will, or couried. So we're going to open up the market for access for our veterans that need that.
And does a veteran need a doctor prescription to be able to access compassionate use of this product?
I think so. I think we'll get enough physicians on board when the product's available.
You know, this is a difficult issue in many respects for veterans who certainly have issues with PTSD, but at the same time, they don't want an illegal product out there in the marketplace that is damaging not only our youth, but young people who overuse the vaping, especially the vaping that I know of, that's been very prevalent in my Senate district. So Thank you for your explanation, and I look forward to working with you because I think it's important that we increase availability of compassion use for veterans who are experiencing PTSD.
It's in the works. I would say this, the industry has done a magnificent marketing job. They have basically been able to sell kids specifically when it's across the street from the school that these must be safe because one, they're in a store that I can buy it, and two, it's been touted as medicinal purposes. We don't get our medicines from gas stations today. But the marketing aspect of this is so much mirrored after the Joe Camel days from tobacco industries. And they knew exactly what they were doing and where they were doing it at. But they've sold the public. And a lot of these parents tell me that the first thing their kids say when they're addressed, hey, Mom, look at what I got. Or Mom caught me doing something. They say, well, it must be safe and legal. It's being sold. It's neither safe nor was it legal. When you hear that this is in litigation, they're litigating the way DSHS was going to propose rules to regulate this, not the content of the product that we're addressing today. So I want to clear the air. This is not a litigation about whether it's okay or not. This is litigation regarding to the process in which we were going to put guardrails to keep what we're dealing with today from happening.
And I'm sure many parents don't really understand the full risk and danger to addiction that their teenagers may face, or even young adults may face.
That's right.
In buying this product. Thank you for answering my questions, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator. Senator Menendez, what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Questions of the author?
Do you yield?
I yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Perry. First of all, I appreciate many of the statements that you made this morning at the press conference you made today, especially concerning synthetic THC. I agree 100% that it needs to be banned. But I do have some questions about the text in SB3 because the way I read it, it not only does it ban and it also criminalizes CBN, which is a natural, non-synthetic, non-intoxicating cannabinoid that helps people sleep. And so I'm just wondering why, if the target is these intoxicating synthetics, why is that included?
CBD and CBG are the two that were the most normal, non-intoxicating, non-psychotropic. One of the original kind of, if you had to point back to what I think the intent would have been under consumables, it would have been those two things. The CBN, I'm not familiar with where the cannabinoids laid or the chemistry behind it. Those are the two that when you think about non-intoxicating gummies or hemp, if you will, those are the two keys that everybody recognizes don't have a high element of a THC component.
Well, and you know, I listened to your layout and I heard the press conference. Look, 8,000 outlets is crazy. Gas stations is dumb. Gummies are very difficult for people to regulate what amount of anything they're taking in. If they're really going to be doing this, and as you probably remember, I filed a medical cannabis bill here since 10 years ago, 2015 when I first arrived. And question, are you aware that Colorado saw this intoxicating hemp problem coming up and they set up an advisory committee made up of scientists, government regulators, hemp industry leaders to make recommendations? After 100 hours of meetings, the committee came to the political consensus, drafted a bill modeled, largely passed into law, including perhaps the most well-vetted list of what cannabinoids are intoxicating and what natural cannabinoids are non-intoxicating. And so CBN's part of that non-intoxicating list. And so I don't know if you'd be open to an amendment to add CBN to that.
You know, I guess I'd take a different approach if the industry that we're dealing with was credible and trustworthy, but they violated every component of integrity, character, and are non-trustworthy. And so with that in mind, we're going to be very narrow, very scope limited to things that we absolutely understand. Colorado's got its issues with legalized recreational pot now. Oklahoma's wishing they hadn't been there. California actually did outlaw what we're talking about doing today. I think New York, correct me if I'm wrong, has the similar outlaw. So we're not the first, unfortunately, but we're definitely not probably going to be the last.
I think if we, like California and other states that have fully legalized, and I'd be happy with medical cannabis, but if we fully legalize cannabis, the natural cannabis, you wouldn't have this industry. I was talking to the president a few minutes ago. In my district, there's a veteran who owns one of these hemp shops. Most of his clients are veterans. One of my dear friends is a retired military officer who was prescribed narcotics when he was still in the military, when he was discharged, had issues with other things, and he said to me, it was these legal hemp products that allowed him to get off the narcotics, allowed him to get off, quit alcohol. And he's concerned, he's frustrated, he's upset. I don't know to what extent your compassionate use bill is going to expand, but by eliminating you can't put the vet-owned hemp shop that works with adults in the same category as a gas station selling gummy bears marketed at kids, because that's wrong. I'm one of those that believe it should be extremely regulated, more than 1,000 feet away from schools or churches, that you can do it like we do liquor stores and that sort of thing, where it's very hard to get, that only people who are, consenting adults can use this. So this is what my concern and my reason for being, feeling that this bill goes too far. But you mentioned a few minutes ago that you have a bill that's going to expand the Compassionate Use Act. You said that it's going to make it, one of the things that you touched on that is very true. Everyone tells me it's too expensive. Part of that's probably because they have very few outlets. Then the other issues that you talked about is that they have to drive the medicine to. So one of the things that the vets have told me, if you're in the Compassionate Use Program and you're in San Antonio and one of the dispensaries here drives it to San Antonio, if you for some reason miss your opportunity to get there, they have to drive it back to Austin. So do you see how for them it's just simpler to use these hemp products than it is to use the state's Compassionate Use Bill Act?
So I'd answer you got a whole lot packed in that. First of all, the Compassionate Use Program will expand to 6 licenses plus satellites plus storage on those satellite locations, so you don't have this back and forth in courier. So I think we've addressed that. Secondly, the lack of quality control through the manufacturing process is one of those issues that no matter whether you're a veteran-owned hemp shop or a non-veteran-owned hemp shop, that we have no control over. And if you haven't had that experience, it's pretty surely like roulette. You've just been lucky to not get one of those products. And I guess at this stage there are other non-prescription, Marinol, and some of those other cannabis products that have been on the market for decades that you don't have to go to Teacup to get.
Right.
But medicine should be administered by physicians.
Correct.
And that's why Teacup is existence, and it should provide veterans the relief they seek, and we're going to make it accessible. I would say to those that are on it, that have a shop with the business model built on this, if you'll go back to 2019, when I laid out the hemp bill, not once but twice and multiple times thereafter, I warned of these days that we're talking about today, that if you get cute and go where you've gone today, that the state would respond accordingly. And so for these people that took a business model and went against what I was warning could happen,
right,
that's their own fault. Now, I have a heart for veterans. I want them to make sure that their medical needs are covered. The Teacup is that program in Texas. I think it will accommodate their needs, and it will be physician-directed. It will be scripted, projected. One of the problems is under today's form, you could take 100 milligrams a day and not be regulated, right? All of our drugs are regulated through pharmacists on how much you're getting, where you're getting, how many you're taking during a month. So that's the things that we lose when we say you should just go get the product at the hemp shop. That's just, you're stepping outside the boundaries of what good practices for medical treatment is.
Completely agree that when anyone that uses any product, whether it's alcohol, hemp, anything to self-medicate, you're putting people in a dangerous position. So I don't disagree with that one at all. I'm just concerned that we're going to be criminalizing something that with these 8,000 outlets and with the inventory that's out there, much like prohibition didn't get people to stop drinking, I don't think this is going to help people stop doing what they're doing, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. I'm going to sit down and listen to possibly other questions. I'm concerned. I understand. I think if we had a compassionate use act or plan that was easily usable, that I think we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I think the compassionate use plan, once it's implemented to its fullest, will accommodate most of the concerns. I would suggest to you that as the compassionate use plan is proved to be a successful model, and as other research around the country starts looking into the different cannabinoids and things that you speak to, there will be opportunity for those conversations through a regulated physician-directed market. You spoke to something about black market indirectly. Here's what this bill does do. Today, if an officer has an enforcement action and it's tied to something in the car that looks or acts or maybe smells like, the problem with that, with this particular loophole that's been exploited, they don't know. Going forward, that won't be an issue because if it's present, it's illegal. And so we solve a lot of enforcement action. As far as investing resources, the state already covers all of these problems that we allowed to have happen. We are in a crossroads here where we continue to turn our head and say, we'll just tax it and regulate it, which again, there ain't enough money to fix the cost of a person that's been affected by it. There's not enough money in the state budget to fix the addictions that come from this, especially at the levels it's creating. I mean, you're talking psychosis and paranoia. That's not getting high. It's a whole different level of mental problem, right? And that's what people are telling me it's doing. So it should not be incumbent upon the state to clean up a mess that they could have stopped to begin with. And we've got examples of vape. We had an opportunity to stop it in Texas, but we chose not to. We chose to regulate it. Now kids are having their lungs bust up because they've sucked down too much moisture, and they're addicted. I wasn't there during Joe Camel's days, and I wasn't there during Prohibition. But here's what I know. The black market is going to be alive and well, regardless of whether this bill passes. In fact, there's a lot of the people that own these temp shops are tied to some of those opportunities to launder money. A lot of them are foreign owned. I'm not going to stop their opportunities, but here's what I know. When their opportunities present themselves to an enforcement officer, there's no question they can go to jail. And that's what this bill does, is clean up. Thank you for your questions. I do respect your opinion. I wish we had a magic wand.
I agree.
This genie needs to get put back in the bottle.
Thank you for taking my questions. Thank you, Mr. President, members.
Thank you, Senator Menendez. Senator Gutierrez, what purpose?
The gentleman yield for a few questions.
I do, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator. I think you and I come at this, we end up at the same place and probably get there differently. I have always been for legalization of cannabis with parameters, and we don't have that here in Texas because what's happening now is, and I know it's going to upset some of our veterans, but what's happening now is that young people are accessing this at 18, 19, and 20 years old, correct?
Correct. Or 25.
Yeah. You mentioned Colorado, and I would argue with you as what kind of problems they have. I think they have a problem with the black market marijuana for sure, because they can't tax it, they can't do that, and so it's competing with their regulated market. But what they've done well in Colorado is you have to be 21 to enter into those shops, correct?
I don't know what Colorado law is. It's not applicable here. So
I would submit to you that it's 21.
Yeah.
And so whether I want to go out and regulate cannabis totally in a regulated fashion like they do in Colorado, where they're weighing the product and all the waste is done accordingly, and you're getting a pure product and you're not getting all these other things. My concern, as is your concern, is that we have these other chemicals in these products that are getting into the bodies of young people, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and so this is a process. This bill goes to the other side. We all know that. The public generally doesn't. It'll come back, likely, and we'll look at this. And so I want to suggest to you that I'm for it right now. But you are assuring us that teacup will be fixed, correct?
I'm ensuring you, and I have the word of the Lieutenant Governor, and I've been very public. And just so you know how public I am on it, the current bill says the DPS may issue 3 initial licenses. I've got an amendment when that comes to the floor of the Senate that will be a shall. So we guarantee the opportunity to open 3 new licenses on top of the 3 we currently have. To be fair, I think it's only one of the current licenses in Texas is actually effective because they haven't been able to make money. And when these things got started, they made less money.
Yeah, two of them are in use and one of them's kind of in limbo or something.
So we're moving towards literally opening up or doubling the capacity to manufacture and control, and then we're giving those satellite locations. And Dish has told me, and DPS said that may take about 12 months, depending on 12 to 18 months. So I've got them on record how long it's going to take them so they don't get to dilly-dally. This amendment that I will have on 1505 will require them to actually follow through and do it, not unlike where, I'm not saying they're not doing their job. I'm saying it's not a priority for them. They'll have to get on board to do this.
Okay, and you and I have talked about possibly expanding teacup to veterans just kind of generally, and I know that we still have to hash that out over the course of the next few weeks.
Yeah, and in conversation with Chairman King over there, he was open to that conversation, and to be truthful, I think it has some merit. How we get there, I don't know today, but I think obviously, and you got to be careful with the veteran community. They don't want to be labeled as PTSDs, but at the same time, that's already allowable under teacup. So if a veteran is experiencing that, they shouldn't have a bunch of hoops to jump through to get to that, right?
That's right.
So I think that's the things that we can have a conversation about.
I hope that that's the message to our veterans. We don't want to shut the door on you over here. The real reality is we've got 18 and 19 and 20-year-old kids.
Yeah.
And there are studies that show that the brain has not fully developed, correct, until you're about 25.
The science is evolving on this, but I will tell you every bit of the science that is currently out there and is evolving too, nothing good happens with this particular synthetic pot.
Some other veterans have suggested that, they can go get that vape pen, which kind of fixes that acute pain, joint pain, whatever it might be, or whatever condition they're having that's causing the PTSD symptoms and so on. And I've heard, and I don't know if that happened this morning, is there a possibility to add some kind of regulated inhalant under teacup?
The teacup has the inhalant in it in its current version, so we accommodated that method of delivery, and my basic understanding with physicians, that's an immediate fix. And so if you're having a crisis moment or you're going through something that's pretty traumatic, the inhalant processes the teacup registered physician-directed dose quickly. It's kind of like I call asthma.
Right.
Asthma, you get corrected pretty quick when you're able to do it. So the inhaler concentration is already built into the base teacup.
And the last set of questions, 2 questions here. Under the stuff that's sold at the gas station, their licensing fee, I think, is $100, right? Dishes?
I don't know what it is, but it's substantial in here going forward.
It's like nothing. And the teacup applicants, the 3 that we have and the one that's kind of in limbo, I think it's $200,000 every 2 years, correct?
And I'm not familiar enough with the bill since it's not sitting on my desk, but it's substantial because we wanted credible manufacturers that were serious and had the wherewithal to actually follow through on delivery.
My point is all these other folks are getting in scot-free.
Sure.
Anybody got $100, you're good.
You're good.
And you're selling a product.
If you can bother to go through the permitting process.
Right, and you're selling a product that is not exactly what it purports to be.
Correct.
As it could have.
And therein lies the
chemicals.
danger.
All right, so I just want to be very mindful as this process plays out that teacup, as Senator Menendez suggested, takes care of our veterans that are absolutely. There's a gentleman named David Bass.
Yes, sir.
And David Bass is a great American, a great veteran. I did a documentary on this. David Bass is in that documentary. He is a teacup participant, and David will tell you how this has helped him get through his cancer. You can see how veterans have used it to get off of opioids. Cannabis is not the great evil when regulated and done in the right way. So
That is correct, and I appreciate your commitment to making sure veterans are. I appreciate your perspective. Some of the conversation we have has been educational for sure, but more importantly, good ideas. And I think Chairman King is open, and as I talked to him about some of the things you talked about, I think Mr. Bass actually supported SB3 for it inside the hearing that day. I was very humbled by the fact that he saw the bigger picture as the harm it's doing outside of the veteran community and within the veteran community. I don't know how many of them have been subjected to what's being on the shelves today. You don't hear from them, right?
Yeah, he's a dear friend.
It's a few. So,
dear friend, I believe in Senator Birdwell's district, but thank you so much.
right. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gutierrez and Senator Menendez. I know Senator Perry, Senator Gutierrez heard you clearly. We all hear you. In the meantime, we are poisoning kids on the street and young adults every day. Every day. I put out a map, look at the map, 8,000 locations in 2 years, almost all built around schools. Superintendents talk about it, students talk about it. It's in our schools now, everywhere. And they do about $1 million a year per store, if you do the math. They're not just selling to veterans or seniors or other people. Senator Betancourt, for what purpose?
Ask questions of the author.
I yield.
You yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. And follow along your comments and Senator Menendez, Senator Gutierrez. The teacup obviously is a very important thing to continue. The uses of this, range not just to veterans, but for people of all ages that have specific needs or issues from mental health, et cetera. And the president just mentioned something that I actually retweeted on social media, okay? That map of the 8,000 dispensaries is explosion, okay, of dispensaries around the state, heavily concentrated in the 80% population zone of I-35, I-45 on the east side of the state, but all over the place, Lubbock, everywhere, okay? Gas stations, in Fort Stockton, I would assume, the Pecos, et cetera. And the president's right. When you look at the potential revenue for these locations, it's probably touching 7 digits, Senator Perry, on average. So this is a business that has exploded into a monumental cash flow business over that time. And I guess the question I have for you is there was a press conference this morning that there were family stories. I think you touched on that. Maybe you should also touch on some of the law enforcement stories, because Senator Gutierrez, to your point, when we had this up in committee, there was a brand, I don't want to give it any PR, but let's just call it a wild, quote, animal brand, okay, that Senator Menendez, that had 50 milligram gummies, and there were 300 of them. And that was 15,000 milligrams that you could probably buy for Senator Gutierrez's Franklin $100 bill. So, and of course, we have absolutely no idea what's in it. So maybe a couple stories. I think the public, the members would like to hear about what law enforcement had to say, or the family members.
Well, law enforcement's very clear. This is a real problem in their communities. There are families that are being devastated by it. Here's the sad commentary. You ask the average person out there, when you mention THC, they're thinking, again, the 5% pot that we as kids grew up in. They have no understanding of truly what is on those shelves today. And so that misinformation that this industry profits over people, that has been successful in pushing that narrative out there that this is safe and it's legal, which neither is true. The average person that has any idea of those shops would believe every product in there is safe and legal, and it's not. But the problem with the safe aspect of it, it's not just a little not safe. it's devastating safe. It is unsafe to the core. So their stories centered around their experiences in their communities and trying to police this stuff. And then the families are heartbreaking because they're just sharing their stories of their vibrant, active, some college-going kids that show up and in short order. Remember, this stuff's only really been actively engaged for about 3 years. So these parents are coming to you with stories, and it's taken a series of 1 month or one hit or 2 or 3 months, and now their kids are not articulate anymore. They're living in their basements with full-time care going forward. Think about your son at 25, off to school or wherever he's at in his stage of life, and he grabs this off the shelf and says, I have a headache tonight. A friend of mine told me this is good. Takes that, and in next week, he's got to get it again. And before you know it, he's addicted. And more importantly, the impact on him. And it's not, like I say, getting you high and you feel bad after we get high and then you're hungry during the high. It's not that pot. It truly has an out-of-body experience. It's seeing demons. It's, one of the parents described today, my son talks to invisible people now. He had to get up the courage, one of the stories was, he had to stood there for 7 minutes in front of a bathroom door to get up the courage to go inside the bathroom to take a shower. I mean, that's what this stuff is doing to our kids and our youth, and for that matter, anybody that takes it.
There's a lot of children, a lot of young adults that are taking, gummies, for anxiety, et cetera. There's 2 different versions. But when you take that 50 milligrams of synthetic and you put it in with probable some dosage level of impurities, we're not even sure what's in it. And people take that and they become addicted to it. There's some tangential side effects that you can't even prescript because you're not even sure what is the interaction, because these synthetic drugs are simply not not under any testing or any type of accountability formula. Am I missing something?
They're not under any conscience.
Yes, right.
That's the distinguishing characteristic here. The people that are doing this have no conscience. They literally do not care about the damage. They just want to know that they're making more money. Right, because when billions of billions starts flowing, that's a lot of money. Anyway, so, Harold, both Mr. President and Senator Perry, your work on this, because it, at the dosage level and at the synthetic level, it's an extreme danger to I would
those
add
using
that I
it.
believe Lieutenant Governor went into a shop yesterday and the gentleman behind the counter pointed to 750 milligram. Lieutenant Governor asked him, said, what is that? They said, well, it's the most powerful thing we got in here. I recommend you take a half of it because each other's tolerance. But you think 750 milligrams, that's, I don't know how you put that in context.
Well, I can put that in context because that's taking 50 milligram gummies and throwing them all in your mouth at one time, and that's quite a shot. And that's going to be, addicting, and over time, some percentage irreparable. So that's off the chart. So thank you both for your efforts on the bill.
Yeah, and later in that little interview that I did, he said, well, kids can get a fake ID, and laughed. That 750 milligrams was $44.95. You wonder how they do 100,000 a month real fast. Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author.
Do you yield?
I yield.
Thank you so much, Senator Perry. You and I have a great deal of agreement on our concern for substance use disorder in the state of Texas. You agree that addiction to marijuana is a substance use disorder, a mental health disorder.
It falls under behavioral health addictions.
With regard to substance use disorder, individuals can become addicted to any number of substances like alcohol, correct?
Correct.
Sedatives, painkillers, stimulants, a number of different substances, including marijuana, correct?
Correct.
And you know that we, as a state, rank last or near last in access to mental health care for substance use disorder, correct?
I don't believe that's a true statistic, but you can use it. I don't agree with you.
Do you know where we rank with regard to access to substance use disorder treatment?
To me, that's not the substance of the conversation, but I've heard your studies before, and then I've heard Madam Chair point out where those studies were, where they were not updated, where they're not factually accurate, and I don't remember the last time, but it's significantly above the number you have, but that's not a relevant conversation today. Teacup is available for those people that need regulated, prescribed cannabis products.
How would you suggest, or let me back up for a moment, by criminalizing all THC product, do you anticipate that black market access and quantity will go up?
So let's be clear. We're not criminalizing THC products today. Outside of the federal regulated hemp plant that is 0.3% in finessible, outside of that, all THC products in Lubbock, in Amarillo, in Travis County, in the state of Texas is illegal. So I'm not criminalizing something that's not already illegal unless it meets the plant definition, very narrowed plant. So this bill is not criminalizing something. It is illegal today. The industry that is selling this crap and poisoning the people of the state got by with some slick attorneys and some smart chemists. I say diabolical chemists. They're not smart. They're evil. They got by with creating loopholes to push this stuff out on the street. So this is not criminalizing something that's not already illegal.
So those are very good points. Let me rephrase. Let me be careful in my rephrasing so that I capture your refinement. Do you believe that eradicating a tested and labeled hemp-derived product will increase the black market availability of those same hemp-derived products?
So I'm going to answer it the way I answered it with Senator Mendez. First of all, we're not going to eliminate black market. I don't care what the subject matter is. It's going to exist. The black market is already involved in some of these retail joints, for sure. They have gotten by, but the answer to your question is, I know today if an officer is presented with an opportunity to have the conversation of whether that's legal or not, that's a real challenge. You see you got a vape, smells like pot, but don't know if it's legal pot. Well, it's never been legal pot. But the Delta 9 conversation when the chemist kind of got in the middle of that. So what I'm telling you is, what I will know if this is passed, there won't be any decision to have to be made by that officer. It will be immediately illegal. So that takes the enforcement issue, which is what people don't understand. When people say properly labeled, properly manufactured, properly tested, make sure it's really good stuff, and we'll be okay with it. Well, that hasn't worked out too well for us in most of these vices that we find ourselves. 80+%, probably higher than that, of our CPS and foster care issues are drug and alcohol related. Usually alcohol first and then drugs second. It doesn't matter what order, but you look at what we've done as a society. Rather than saying, this is not good, we're not going to allow it, and we'll enforce it till it goes out of existence, we've fallen prey to the narrative, well, if we just tax it and regulate it, that makes it okay. It does not. If I could roll back time, I'm not a teetotaler, that's not my deal. But you can't argue that alcohol has any virtuous impact to it. You can't argue that vapes has any virtual impact to us. You can't argue any concept of what we're getting done today is not a good thing to do.
I agree with you with regard to prosecution as a former prosecutor, having prosecuted possession of marijuana cases. And I think perhaps we would agree that taxation, regulation, and enforcement as a package deal is probably the most effective.
I disagree.
So you believe that prosecution alone is the most effective?
I believe these people that are in this industry migrate to the path of least resistance. So they're going to move to the next state, the unsuspecting state, and open up their retail stores and get just where they are today with us when possible. So if you make it miserable on them, and every one of these owners know for a fact that I can go to jail if I'm selling this, I'm going to get fined out of existence. And by the way, to have it at all, it has to be registered with dishes, and that's $500 per product conversation. So if I do it at that level, are you going to tell me that someone's going to be able to go to the street and get that same product? Maybe, probably do today anyway. But at least now I know when that product shows up on the street, I don't have to wonder if it's legal or not. And then we enforce it. So I will tell you, the threat of jail cells, even with people that are motivated by greed at the expense of the health of the public they serve it or give it to, are going to have a different opinion about doing it in Texas. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. I know what we're doing today. The state does not have enough money to deal with the enforcement, the inspection, the regulatory environment that everybody speaks to, and then pick up the tab in our Health and Human Services budget for all the addiction stuff that comes from allowing that to happen. It's not worth, the juice ain't worth the squeeze.
So let's talk about that juice and where it's getting squeezed. Consistently, about 65% of inmates in Texas have a substance use disorder. Would you agree with that?
I would have thought it had been higher, but 65 is enough for me, right? It's good.
The fiscal note on this bill doesn't have an estimate for the impacts on courts, jails, and probation systems from this bill. Do you anticipate that local property taxes will go up to address higher incarceration, prosecution, and treatment from this bill?
So what I hear you saying is it's going to cost us more, so let's let them run rampant. That's never an excuse.
I'm saying it's going to cost us one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm saying as we stake this, as we put the stake in the ground, that we're really clear with where we stand on this issue. There will be lesser of them. However, in the event we find them, we will prosecute. And if the owner knowingly did what he shouldn't have done, he will go to jail. Or if the manufacturer is doing what. So I have no problem with that. The day we acquiesce our job to public safety and the welfare of the state because it could cost us more to actually go after that is the day that the state of Texas ceases to be the state I want to live in.
Would you be in favor of taking, as a CPA, taking an honest look at the costs of arrest, investigation, prosecution, and incarceration for substance use disorder compared to the cost of robust regulation and substance use disorder treatment?
I'm not interested. I want it gone. Parents need to know that it's gone. We need to do what we need to do. As far as the cost analysis, I've been on HHSC committee since 2015, serving as vice chair. I promise you, if we didn't have a system that we chose not to do the hard thing and just say no to it, but we've allowed it to, quote, be regulated. We spend billions of dollars on addiction. We spend most of our health and consumer budget, and a large part of this budget in this building, on broken family issues. So I don't know how you put $1 on that cost, but I'm telling you, it's a huge number if you can, and most importantly, it's a cost that we can never recover. I see this as an inflection point that we can decide to say no, and whatever it takes to extinguish it, we will do it. We did it with K2, bath salts, and spice. I know you and I are not going to agree that that's what this is. That is what is on the shelves today. It's the new K2. It's the new K2. So So with that in mind, we don't get to lay our responsibility aside for fear that it may raise taxes. And if they're state jails, that's on the state dime. To get them there, yeah, there's an additional cost. The cost of not doing it to that community and that family is you can't put a dollar on it.
I completely agree with you that we need to zealously look at our issues with substance use disorder in our community and do everything we can to combat them. And I appreciate your commitment to that issue. I question the wisdom of a just say no policy and look forward to working with you on a way to constructively address substance use disorder in Texas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Just to answer your question, Senator Eckhart, the testimony in the press conference today, the police said where they could investigate and go undercover, 75% of what they found was illegal. That's what the police and the district attorneys say. Senator Sparks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to applaud your efforts and Senator, your efforts to aggressively go after this problem. Last fall, I did a 24-town town hall tour across rural West Texas. This was brought up at almost every stop. First by law enforcement, because they didn't have the tools to deal with this. Second, by school officials, saying that this is now a problem that's gotten all the way down into 5th and 6th grade, and there's no way to teach kids that are vaping using these products or any of the other types, gummies, whatever. Mental health authorities, and also our juvenile justice system. And so I think taking a hard line at this point to protect the children of Texas is the only way to go about this. I guess my only question to you is, I think part of, and this has already been mentioned today, part of what we're facing is a lack of understanding, I think, from our young people about how dangerous it is. Because not every kid's going to have a psychotic break. But as we heard this morning in the press conference and a few of those stories, we heard that across my district of folks who know children who have had psychotic breaks from this product, right? Or these products. And I don't think the parents understand the risk that their children, so they're not talking about it enough. My question is, are there things that we need to be doing in addition to this bill to help raise awareness?
That's a great question, and I think that we can initiate some boots on the ground methods with schools and PTAs and communities and churches to this is not it's non-discriminating. It's any kid that sees it on a shelf or somebody says, here, try this, it's kind of cool, not understanding what might be in that. So I think you've got multiple venues that you can put out the word. The biggest attack or education, if you will, is when those shut down. And parents will go, oh, must have been something to that. But we ought to consider some we get to do PSAs in our districts. Cable companies have to do so many a day. I would encourage every senator to go down and do a PSA about how bad this stuff is. And let them run it on TV. It's free. It doesn't cost you a dime. I know I got a campaign account. Most of us do. If we want to put an ad in the paper, there's other ways to get the message out. Most parents, fortunately, don't have kids involved in some of this, but the ones that they do, they don't. I have a parent yesterday or today show up, and they said they're 20-something, came home with beverage-infused THC. And I got on my soapbox. I said, you got to stop that. They were of age. They were over 18. First time they'd been exposed to it. And he's like, well, a friend of mine gave it to me. I said, this is not good stuff. Actually, the beverage THC, and that's where the House and us have some conversations, They say the molecules in the alcohol component mix. And I asked somebody today in press, I said, under what universe does mixing alcohol and a drug end well for anybody? Who could ever think that was a good idea, right? But what I'm told is the science behind that is it attaches to the molecules differently and it makes your brain accept it quicker and want more of it. Lieutenant Governor was talking to someone in the restaurant association. They used to serve THC-infused beverages. They said after the second drink, the person literally was not themselves, that they were, 2 drinks to most people, you're not intoxicated. You may be a little buzzed, but you're not stumbling over yourself. They said they couldn't recognize them. So a lot of the restaurants do not serve THC-infused beverages for that effect. When you're mixing drugs and alcohol to begin with, that can't be smart. But when you're doing it and selling it to people as if it's legal and okay to do, you just took down one of the biggest barriers that people don't do things because they know it's illegal. Shame on them. But to your question specifically, we do have to need some education, and we probably ought to start education yesterday because we ain't going to get out of here till May or maybe October if it takes to pass this bill. Whenever it does. But until then, to your point, and it's a valid one, we've got kids going into these, our parents seeing their kids with it, our parents not knowing their kids with it that think it's safe and legal. And we need to get a PSA or we need to get a message going on out there that this stuff is not good. Thank you for the question.
Senator Perry. Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, we're on suspension. Secretary, call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
24-7, 24 ayes, 7 noes. The rule is suspended. Chair lays out on second reading. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 3. Secretary will read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 3 relating to the regulation of consumable hemp products and the hemp-derived cannabinoids contained in those products.
There is an amendment. Following amendment, Secretary will read the amendment. Excuse me, Senator Betancourt. You are in her way.
For amendment number 1 by Perry.
You're recognized on your amendment, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment requires that all legal consumable hemp products must be tested at a lab located in this state of Texas, and that lab must be registered with DEA. Additionally, the amendment requires that consumable hemp products be tested using the same testing methods that we have already established in hemp plants. This change ensures that Texas has the ability to have oversight over the labs and testing processes. There are currently 12 DEA registered labs in Texas, more than enough to accommodate the consumable hemp products that are still on the shelves.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is adopted. The following amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 2 by Perry.
I'll wait till it gets to the back, Senator. On your amendment, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. For those that are arguing that we should just regulate it, this is the first step in strong regulations. Just ask for some clarity and specificity into how we were going to, quote, register the products. This amendment requires that all consumable hemp products be registered with these dishes prior to being sold in retail state. Dishes will maintain a list of registered consumable hemp products on its public website to allow law enforcement and consumers easily to verify whether or not a product is legal. Additionally, the products will require to contain a QR code that, if scanned, will link to the product registration site. A registered product may not contain any synthetic or artificial ingredients, and a product may not be mixed with contain other mood-altering substances. The cost of registry is each product will be charged $500 to register into that in the order to appear in the registry. Additionally, the person commits a Class B misdemeanor if the person sells or possesses an unregistered product. The product registration key is a key tool to law enforcement because it will allow them to quickly determine if a product on the shelf is legal.
Senator Eckhart, for what purpose?
To ask questions of the author.
Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Senator Perry. As I've said before, there is much to love in your bill, particularly with regard to the tightening regulation of this industry. And as a former prosecutor, I watched as cases for personal possession fell apart because officers couldn't identify the product. So I agree in principle with the QR code. I'm just looking at this, however. In order to get a unique QR code for each consumable hemp product, does this require a $500 fee on every package?
Every product.
So this would make each product package a $500 input for every saleable item.
That's correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
Members, Senator Menendez, what purpose?
I just wanted to get clarification on that last exchange.
Do you yield, Senator Perry?
I yield.
So
Let me put it this way. If you have 1,000 products on the shelves, all of them would be required to be registered, and each one of those would have paid a $500 registration fee to be registered in the portal.
I guess that's where I was trying to figure out what you're, if there is something that's 100% natural, it's agreed to, it's legal, it falls under the no THC, it's a hemp product, that individual package does not, each one of the packages does not pay the $500 fee, right?
No, it's the product
category.
class. It's the SKU.
It's the SKU.
It's the SKU, SKU.
That's different. So yeah.
But if you have 1,000 SKUs,
yeah,
you're going to have 500 times each SKU.
That's fine,
Okay.
But it's not each individual
Right.
product. Yeah, okay.
I didn't clarify. Not individual package, but the SKU. So a SKU, once it's registered, should, in good faith, if it doesn't change manufacturing, be there. But that's why we have the enforcement tool to check.
I'm 100% on board. Those last two amendments make this bill a lot better. If this, we're going to have to sit back and think about this, because obviously nobody wants children to have access to anything that's going to hurt them. But thank you for answering my question.
No problem. Thank you.
Any objection to the amendment? Hearing none, amendment is adopted. Following amendment. Secretary, read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 3 by Perry.
Give everyone a moment to get it and read it. You're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is going to the front end of the conversation, from the supply chain, from the manufacturer to the retailer. Manufacturers and retailers that are creating or selling consumable hemp products without a license or retail registration from DISHs. These actors are attempting to avoid state regulations, and they're operating in an illegal marketplace. This amendment makes it a felony of third degree for a person to operate without a manufacturer license or a retail registration permit from DISHs.
Senator Menendez, what purpose?
This, thank you. Question of the author, Mr. President.
Do you yield?
I yield.
Very good. So this is to try to get a
control of the manufacturing, and the
which
distribution
is
system.
Very positive, and also to put a control of this weed-like growth of these outlets that are going everywhere. Oh, this is positive. This is moving in the right direction. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Senator, for your consideration. Any objection to the amendment? Hearing none. Oh, sorry, Senator Cook. I did not see your light. I'm sorry. Oh, you object. Okay. Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt.
30 ayes, 1 nay. Your objection is registered.
No.
2? Okay. 29-2. Your 2 objections are registered. The amendment is adopted. Following amendment. Secretary will read the amendment.
Floor Amendment number 4 by Eckhart.
Senator Eckhart, you're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. As I have mentioned, I like a lot of the regulatory aspect of this bill. And in fact, I filed a bill to regulate all forms of THC. However, I believe this bill goes too far in that it would put out of business the consumable hemp industry in Texas. I share legitimate concerns regarding the sale of low THC products, like lack of age restrictions, questionable testing procedures, deceiving packaging, unscrupulous business practices. But I do believe that these issues can be addressed through effective regulatory environment that this bill creates for consumable hemp products. None of them require banning over a dozen forms of low THC products that, when regulated correctly, are no more dangerous than CBD or CBG. This amendment that I am offering today would strike all language that limits consumable hemp products to products that only contain CBD and CBG, but keeps the well thought out regulatory environment that Senator Perry lays out in Senate Bill 3. There are 7,700 active licenses to manufacture or sell consumable hemp products in Texas. There is no public health justification to warrant killing thousands of small businesses, especially not when the solution is in this bill. With that, I offer the amendment.
You recognize.
Well, I know this is going to shock you, but I'm a no on the amendment, but I do take exception with your last statement. And normally you wouldn't have that on an amendment. There is no threat of public safety. I wish you could talk to the parents, and they're just a representative of a large group. The larger group just didn't have the opportunity to come to the Capitol to tell their story. So the idea that there's not a public safety that justifies getting rid of these is just a factually inaccurate statement when you look at the families that have been affected by it. With that, I'm a no, sir.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado,
There being 4 ayes and 24 nays, the amendment fails. Senator Perry, you're recognized for passage to engrossment.
Move passage to engrossment.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell.
24 ayes, 7 nays. The bill passes to engrossment. I believe you have the 25th vote. You're recognized to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Move to suspend the constitutional 3-day rule.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.
25 ayes, 6 nays. Constitutional 3-day rule. Chair lays out in the constitutional 3-day rule is suspended. Sorry. Senator Perry, you're recognized. Chair lays out in third reading and final passage. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 3. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 3 relating the regulation of consumable hemp products and the hemp-derived cannabinoids contained in those products.
Senator Blanco, what purpose?
Speak in favor of the bill.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise today in support of Senate Bill 3 because I think we've got a responsibility to protect Texans from unsafe, unregulated products that are out there right now. I want to thank the author, Senator Perry, for bringing this to us. Look, we've seen a sharp increase in THC-infused products being sold in corner stores, in smoke shops, products that look like candy, that look like soda pop, things that look like snacks. Synthetic cannabinoids are significantly more potent than grown cannabis, and these products are ending up in the hands of kids. When you look at the data, the Texas Poison Control Network reported a 495% increase in marijuana-related calls involving children aged 5 and under between 2017 and in 2022. In 2017, before Texas deregulated hemp, those calls made up 4.8% of all cases. By 2022, after we legalized hemp, that number had jumped to 28.6%. Many of us are parents. As a father, I can't ignore that. And as a body, I don't believe we should ignore it. House Bill 1325, which legalized hemp in 2019, was never intended to allow intoxicating products to be sold with little oversight. And this bill closes that loophole. That was never the intent when we legalized hemp, and this bill fixes that loophole. Just as important, this bill does not impact the compassionate use program, and I had several conversations with the author, and thank you, Senator Perry. As a veteran, I know people who struggle with PTSD, chronic pain, and other serious conditions. These are my buddies. These are my family members that served. And I've seen how cannabis under a healthcare provider's direction can change lives. That's why I've supported the compassionate use program from day one. And I'm going to continue to support those efforts to expand the program. And as Senator Perry, I appreciate your thoughtful approach to ensuring those patients maintain that access. This bill is about safety and it's about accountability. It's about making sure Texas can trust what's being sold in their communities while preserving access to legitimate medical treatment. For these reasons, I'll be voting in support of this bill. Thank you.
Senator Blanco, thank you for your thoughtful comment on the bill. Something that Senator Eckhart said, members, and I shared this with some other senators, these are not small business people. We only have 1,000 McDonald's in Texas and about 1,300 Starbucks, and suddenly in 2 years, 8,000 people decided to open a smoke shop. This is all connected. We just don't have time to do an investigation on it. Maybe we will when some violators break this law. Trust me, all these thousands of people just didn't come up with an idea to have a smoke shop in the last 24 months. Like the lottery system. We found out a lot of people were working together. Senator Perry, you are recognized, and I wish this were going out of here 31-0, members. I wish it was going out 31-0. I think if I put in 17 years my top bills, this would be in my top 5. Because we know kids are getting poisoned today and adults, and we have something to do about it. You're recognized on final passage.
Thank you, members. And on behalf of the family that have experienced hardships and hopefully to prevent the ones of the future that would have, if not for this bill, I thank you for that. To your point, this industry is not very old. These are not legitimate small business operators as in the usual context. Prior to 19, they didn't exist. The beverage industry didn't have an opportunity to sell THC-infused beverages prior to 19. So this is not going to, it's not going to change their world much. Some of these hemp shops may go out of business, but they brought this on themselves. And I remind people, go back to 19 and listen to that clearly. This is the day that I predicted, unfortunately, has came. Thank you again for your support. Move final passage, committee substitute, Senate Bill 3.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Bardwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez.
24 ayes and 7 no votes. Thank you, Senator Perry.